Hi and welcome. We're going to have a look now, since you're probably curious. Well, Tibetan doesn't look like just the alphabet, so what's happening? So as I've said, I think in the earlier video about the sounds of Tibetan, that every letter of the alphabet naturally has the ah sound. So how do you change it so that you have something other than the ah sound behind the letter, or as the sound of the letter? So you remember that ga was our first important letter, our first letter of the alphabet, ga. And that just always sounds like the letter A sound, ga. If you want to make it what we would say in English an I sound, gi, gi, you need to add a sort of a hook symbol on the top, which is called a gigu. So we do ga, and then we do a gigu, and then we can put our tek after that. Ga, gigu, gi. If you were spelling it to somebody, the first one is just ga. The second one is ga, gigu, ki. Ga, gigu, ki. And then the next one is u. So if you want to change it to an u sound, the ga gets what's called a shabkyu. Ga, shabkyu, gu. Ga, shabkyu, gu. And next we have, again above the letter, e. And the name for this vowel symbol is a drengbu. So ga, drengbu, ge. Oops. Ke, ga, drengbu, ke. And then we put our tek in. And the last one is for the vowel sound o, and that's called a naro. So you have ga, naro, go. Ga, naro, go. So to go through the whole list, you have ga, ga, gigu, gi, ga, shabkyu, gu, ga, drengbu, ge, ga, naro, go. Try that yourself. And the same principle applies for the whole alphabet. When you have a printout and you go through when you've memorized your sounds, you can try going through them all one by one. It's a good exercise for your mouth to just practice saying the alphabet with all of the different sounds and then trying them randomly to see if you can test yourself. It helps along, but we're going to review lots and lots of words together, so you can also just listen along and copy, no problem. So we can practice with the words for gigu, shabkyu, drengbu, and naro. So you can see a little bit how this works. So for example, the word gigu for the hook that makes the I sound is ga, gigu, gi, and then ga, shabkyu, gu. So when you say ga, gigu, gi, what you're really saying is ga, gigu, gi. And you might notice in my pronunciation, this ka and this ka, it's not quite ga. It's not as voiced as ga. It's sort of a halfway between a ka and a ga in central dialect. So there are some dialects that just say ga, which is fine. But you may hear it sort of a halfway ka-ga sort of sound. So that's gigu. Next, for shabkyu, you remember that this was a sha, and then this is a pa, and this is a sa. So shab, you see that you have the sha. After that, you have a suffix pa, which sort of closes the sha, becomes shab, shab. And the sa is a second suffix. It's not pronounced anymore. In the past, it might have been, but the pronunciation of this last character doesn't get pronounced anymore. So shab. And then we move into something new. We'll cover this a little bit more in a few minutes, but you're going to see something new, which is a subfix. So what's a subfix? A subfix, we have ga, and then underneath it, we're going to stack a letter ya. So ga yata is how you spell it when you're reading it out loud. Ga yata kya. And then we add also here a shabkyu. So you have both a stacked letter and a vowel marker. Shabkyu. So the ga with the yata underneath it becomes kya. And then the kya with a shabkyu underneath it becomes kyu. So shabkyu. So that one's this one. Ga shabkyu gu. If you see that, just the root letter itself, the root letter plus the shabkyu, and then the new pronunciation is the whole sound itself. Ga shabkyu gu. Next, we have the vowel sound for e. So we have a prefix a, which does not affect the sound. Then we have a ga. Then we have another stacked letter, which we're going to learn about soon, no problem, which is a ra. We're going to put a ra underneath this. So we stack the ra. So ga, rata, ra. We'll review all the vowel changes and the sound changes a little bit later, but just trust me for now that the ga plus a ra equals dra. You remember that I reviewed the sounds of Tibetan, so this is one of the retroflex D sounds. And then we're going to add our drengbu. So drengbu. And then we have a nga to make an eng sound at the end. So dreng. And we can put our tek at the end. So the way that you would spell this is ao. Ao. You put o at the end to make it, people know that it's a prefix. Ao, ka, rata, dra, drengbu, dre, nga, dreng. Don't worry about it. You will get the hang of it. This is just a preliminary introduction. So just to start to see how it all fits together. So dreng, and then ba, shabkyu, bu. Dreng, bu. Dreng, bu. Dreng, bu. So then that's this guy, this fourth one in the characters up here. So ga, dreng, bu, ge. Ga, dreng, bu, ge. And finally, the naro, naro. So we have, this one's a little bit easier because we just have a na, and then we have a ra, and we put a naro on the ra to make it ro. Naro, naro, very easy. So this one is ga, naro, ko. Ga, naro, ko. And that's it for the vowels. Now you know the 4 vowel signs. Gigu, shabkyu, drengbu, naro. And you can see in each one, you have an example of each one. So you have a gigu in the gigu, you have a shabkyu in the shabkyu, you have a drengbu in the drengbu, and you have a naro in the naro. That's an easy reference. Next, we can have a look at the stacking. So you saw a little bit of stacking here with the ka, yatak, kya. and the ka, rata, da. So we'll have a look at all of the stacking possibilities that you have. So first we will look at yatas. So ya, just by itself, looks like this, if you remember from the sounds of Tibetan and the alphabet, how to read the alphabet. So ya, but when it's underneath, you may have noticed here, it looks a bit more like a hook under there. So ya goes underneath 7 letters of the alphabet. So when it's added underneath ka, you have ka, and then when you're spelling it out loud, you say ka yata. Oops, sorry. Yata kya. So you hear the difference? Ka yata kya. So it becomes like a KYA in English. Ka yata kya. That's how you spell it out loud. Next you have ka yata kya. Ka yata kya. And then we have ga yata gya. Now these 3 in the eastern provinces, some Tibetans or other dialects, they the pronunciation has changed more so that they actually sound like the ones in the next row that I'm going to show you. So you don't need to, it depends who you're regularly having conversations with, but you should be aware that the sound is a little bit different in different places. So the next 4 that take a yata underneath are ba, yata, cha. So what happens is this ba, yata, cha sounds like ja. The sound is exactly the same. And for some places, even this kya sounds like ja. Sometimes it sounds like kya, or it might sound like ja. Here, ba yata ja always sounds like ja. Next, you have pa yata cha. So if you remember, that was this sound cha, the next one in the row. Then we have pa yata cha. And same idea, the sound is like the next letter in the row with the cha sound. And same thing for these guys. Ka yata kya or ka yata cha. Ka yata kya or ka yata cha. Then we have ma yata nya. So it seems like a strange exception because in English we wouldn't spell it the same way, but in Tibetan it's logical. It follows the same order as the next row. So this is what it sounds like. It sounds like nya. Cha, 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 nya. So it's really just a spelling difference. The sound is exactly the same. So when we talked about the sounds in the earlier video, this is why. They look different, and they function different just in terms of the spelling. It's how you recognize what makes this cha different from that cha and that cha. When you're writing, you can tell the difference a lot easier. Whereas when you're listening, it's a challenge because they sound the same. So very important to be aware of that. So these are all of the yatas. So ka yata kya, ka yata kya, ka yata kya, ka yata kya. And then pa yata cha, pa yata cha, pa yata cha, and ma yata nya. And like you saw up here, you can then add other things around it, but that's the basic sound. So if you add a shabkyu, this ka yata kya, shabkyu, kyu. So you also add the vowels to that if needed. Next, we have a bit of a longer list. which is the rata. So the rata, the ra subfix. So the ra that goes underneath a root letter. So first we'll have a look at the first row, how the rata is attached underneath the first row. So we have ga, ga, and then we say rata to say that it's stacked on a ra. Ga, rata, ta. So this is where we get our retroflex T sound. Ga, rata, ta. Next we have ka, rata, ta. So we have a aspirated or with a puff of air retroflex T sound, ta. Next we have ka, rata, ta. Again, it's sort of a halfway between a T and a D, often, if you will, here. So ka, rata, ta, ka, rata, ta, ka, rata, ta. Next row, we have ta, rata, ta. Same thing, same sound. Ka, ta, rata, ta. Then we have ta, rata, ta. Same sound. And then ta, rata, ta. Whoops. Rata, ta. So ta, rata, ta, ta, rata, ta, and ta, rata, ta. Retroflex D. And similar to what happened up here, we have, oops, na, rata, na. No change in the sound. Na doesn't change the sound. Na, rata, na. You probably won't see it much in modern Tibetan writing anyway, maybe in classical Tibetan writing, but na, rata, na is not very common in modern Tibetan that I've seen so far. Next row, we have pa, oops, pa, rata, ta, same sound, retroflex T. Next, pa, rata, ta. Oops, I forgot my tek in between. We have our tek. And pa, rata, ta. Same sound. And then ma, rata, ma. Whoops. Ma, rata, ma. No change in the sound for this one. And then we have sha, rata, sha. No change in the sound. Sa, rata, sa. No change in the sound. And ha, rata, ra. This one does get a change in the sound because you can actually put a H and an R sound together. You're probably only going to see it with Sanskrit transcription. It's not a typical modern Tibetan sound. Shra, shra. So with some mantras and things like this, you may see it. So let's go through them together. And just remember, with the rata, most of the changes are to make this retroflex sound, or no change, or just the ha has the shra, unusual sound. So ka, rata, ta, ka, rata, ta, ka, rata, ta. Sorry, ka, rata, ta. Then we have ta, rata, ta, ta, rata, ta, ta, rata, ta, and na, rata, na. Then pa, rata, ta, pa, rata, ta, pa, rata, ta, and ma, rata, ma. Sha, rata, sha, sa, rata, sa, and ha, rata, sha. It's the different one. Those are the ratak. Next, we have some head letters or superfix letters or subscribed letters. You'll see it written in different ways in different books and different lessons, I suppose. I like superfix. It sounds like a superhero or something like that. So I like superfix and subfix. I find it easy to keep track. So we'll look at what letters can have a la underneath it and what it looks like. So la can be added to 6 letters. So we have, again, from the beginning of the alphabet, ga, and then we stack underneath a la, which still pretty much just looks like a la. I guess I'll put on the top here just to show that these are la superfixes. Ga, la, ta, la. And you'll be thankful to know most of these are just pronounced la. So ga, la, ta, la, ga, la, ta, la, a, la, ta, la, ra, la, ta, la, sa, la, ta, la. And this is the one exception, which is sa, la, ta, da. So the sound, these are all la, 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 la. Except for this one, which sounds like da. Just as a reminder there. Sa, la, ta, da. And if you know the Tibetan word for month or moon, it's dawa. And so you're going to start to recognize this one. It's fairly common in modern Tibetan. So dawa, the sound da will be recognizable as day or moon from this character. Then we have a wa, wasur. It's like a wa underneath, wasur. Like a wa on the corner or on the edge of the letter. So the letter wa looks like this, if you remember from the Tibetan alphabet. And when it's stacked underneath the alphabet, it thankfully does not change the sound at all. But as with all the other things that you notice, the helpful point is in the spelling of the word, which helps you know what word you're talking about because the sounds are very similar. So first row, we have ka, wasur, ka. Then we have ka, ka, wasur, ka. No change in the sound, just a helpful spelling tip to show you what the difference in the word is. Then ka, wasur, ka. Same. Then the next row, cha, wasur, cha. And we can move over a little bit to where it would normally be. We have nya, wasur, nya. Then next row we have ta, wasur, ta. And we skip one and we have ta, wasur, ta. Next row, ta, wasur, ta. And back here, ta, wasur, ta. No change in the sound. Then we have, next row, sha, wasur, sha. This one, you probably will start to see it in modern Tibetan with the word shamo, which is hat. So shamo is hat and it has a wasur. That's one of the most common things that you will notice. Oh, and ta, this one, ta means salt. So that's another common one that you'll come across. That's pretty much the most common ones that you'll see is salt and hat. Ta and sha. Then we have sa, wasur, sa. Next row, we have ra, wasur, ra. And then we have la, wasur, la. Sha, wasur, sha. Sa, wasur, sa. And then we final row we have ha, wasur, ha. Those are all the wasurs that you might see, although in my experience, it's fairly rare to see them. And those are the ones that you're going to remember the most and come across the most if you're looking at modern Tibetan. And our next installment here are some more superscribed letters. So they go on top of the letter. And for this, when you spell it out loud, you say go, meaning head, becomes a head letter, or a superfix is a head letter in Tibetan. So it's called a, for example, here we have a ra again, but in this case it's called a rago, meaning a ra head. So the first example is, oops, ra, and then we stack the ka underneath it. So we say ra kata ka. No change in the sound, just in the spelling. Ra kata ka. Then we have a little bit. Ka, oops, ra, oh my goodness, ra, kata, ka. And then ra, nata, na. Next row we have our third column here. Ra, oops, ra, jata, ja. And ra, nyata, nya. And we have ra, ta, ta, ta. Over in the third column, ra, ta, ta, whoops, ta, ta, da. And ra, oops, nata, na. And third column of the next one, we're going to put ra, bata, ba, and oops, ra, mata, ma. No change in the sound again. Then we have ra, zata, za. Third column, ra, za, zata, za. Let's just read through those again. I guess we'll look through the wasurs also. So for wasur, we've got ka, 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 cha, nya, ta, da, za, ca, sha, sa, ra, la, sha, sa, and ha, if you remember from the alphabet. It's good practice to test your reading skills here. Then you have ka, ra kata ka, ra gata ga, ra ngata nga, ra jata ja, ra nyata nya, ra ta ta ta, ra da ta da, ra nata na, ra bhata bha, ra mata ma, ra zata za, ra zata za. Then next we have the lagos, so the la heads, la superscript. And similar to what just happened above, it superscribes, but it doesn't change the pronunciation. So you have la kata ka. So you notice the difference. When la is underneath, they all become la. But when la is on top, the sound of the root letter beneath it stays the same. So we have la kata ka, then third row, la kata ka, and la, ngata, nga. And we have la, chata, ja. Third row, la, chata, ja. And next row, la, tata, ta. Third row, la, tata, oops, tata, ta. Next row, la, pat, oops, pata, pa. And third row, la, pata, pa. And finally, la, hata. And this one changes a little bit. La, hata, sa. If you're able to do an aspirated L, some of you who speak Welsh, you know very well how to do a sa. So sa, sa, for example. Sa is spelled with a la, hata, sa. If you just say lasa, that's fine. Everybody will understand you. No big deal. But if you can say sa, then go for it. Enjoy. Our next, so we'll just repeat that again. So la kataka, la gataga, la ngatanga, la chataja, la chataja, la tatata, la tatata, la patapa, la patapa, la hata, sa. And then we have sago, the sa head. So let's have a look at this. We have sa kataka. Oops, I did an extra stack there. Then we have third row, sa kataka and sa ngatanga. And over in our last row here, we have sa nyata nya. Then we have sa ta ta ta. Third row, sa ta ta ta. Oh, and we have our sa nata na. Then sa pat. Oops. Sa patapa. Third row, sa patapa. And sa matama. And finally we have sa sata za. No change for all of the sounds here. So one more time. Sakataka, sagataga, sanyatanya, sangatanga, sanyatanya, satatata, sadatata, sanatana, sapapapa, sapapa, sapatapa, sapatapa, samatama, and then satsatata. And finally, we have some Sanskrit characters. So when you're reading mantras, for example, you're just reading the Sanskrit words written out using the Tibetan letters. So there are some Tibetan letters that don't quite fit the Sanskrit sounds. So some of them have been modified a little bit more even so that they can write the Sanskrit sounds with letters that look mostly like Tibetan. So this is how it looks. And usually on the keyboard, you need to use the shift key to get it to turn around like this. So what you have is a ta, but instead you say on the keyboard, for example, you do shift ta, and it becomes kind of a, what's called a retroflex. Retroflex, because it's like if it was being seen in a mirror. So retroflex ta. Then you have the same thing for ta. Retroflex ta is a backwards ta, you can call it. You have a backwards or a retroflex ta. Whoops. Side. Okay. Ta. And a retroflex na as well. Then we have further down, we have a retroflex sha. But this one has a different sound. Sha is pronounced ga. Retroflex sha is pronounced ga. So what you say when you're spelling this, right? You say ta lo da, ta lo. So okay, this is okay. Retroflex. I'll try to explain this better. So the retroflex is the mirror image, but it also gives you the retroflex of the sound. So da ra ta da, and then ta ra ta. Sorry, I'm saying rata, but I should be saying lo. So in this case, when you do the mirror image, you say lo. So ta lo ta, ta lo ta, ta lo ta, and na lo na. So the na also gets the tongue pulled back a little bit more so that it's a retroflex na, a little bit further back in the mouth where the tongue hits. And then this one is shalo ka. So shalo ka. It's a ka. Okay, so because it's so unusual to type it and find it, it's a bit hard to get. So I used a website called Lexilogos, which has a nice Tibetan interface. And so I've just copied it from there. This is how it looks. Ga, shalo, cha. So the pronunciation for this one is cha. But in any case, ga, shalo, cha. This one is fairly rare, but you may come across it. So we have ta, lo, tra, ta, lo, tra, ta, lo, tra, na, lo, na, sha, lo, ga, and ga, sha, lo, cha. Next, we have the subscribed ha. So ha, oops, ha underneath, or subfix. So again, these are Sanskrit modifications. So you have ga, hata, gha. Then we have za, hata, za. And then we have a retroflex D. And we're going to try to stack and see if it works. So we have dha, as in dharma. Dharma is actually this character. Or maybe the next one. No, this is, sorry, this is the retroflex one. So it's dha. This one is a retroflex one. So dha. Next one is regular dha, as in dharma. So D, and then we stack it with the ha, dharma. And then we have ha, oops, ha, hata, ha. So let's see now. Ga, hata, ga, za, hata, za. I guess dalo, da, hata, da. And then dahata, da, and bahata, bah. Like a word like bhumi, maybe you've heard, possibly. Bodhisattva bhumi. So that brings us through all of the, let's just do a quick review here. We did the vowel signs. We did the yatas. We did the ratas. We did the latas. Then we did the wasurs. And we did the rago, the lago, and the sago. And then the retroflex letters, so the lo and the hatas. Now, finally, we're just going to look at the structure of how to find a root letter, or just how to orient yourself in a Tibetan word, generally speaking. So the most complex Tibetan letter or syllable will have 7 pieces to it. So we can give the example of, we have a ba as a prefix, Then we have a sago, so a head sa, and then we stack that on top of a ga, and then we stack that on top of a ra. So, and then we can add a vowel sound, shabkyu, underneath. Then we can have a suffix of a ba again, for example. And then, as I mentioned a bit earlier, there's a sa, which is a second suffix. So the way that you would spell this, for a prefix, you add o after it to indicate that it's a prefix. So you have pao, sa, gata, ga, rata, da, shabkyu, dru, ba, sa, drup. So all of this complicated thing to basically make the sound drup. It's just that one small sound, but the modifiers show you how it's spelled, and that's what makes a difference for knowing sometimes the difference between one word and another. So you see in here, sandwiched in the middle of all of this, you have the root letter, which in this case is ga. And the ga has been modified in the sound to be much more of a g sound, because it has the prefix and the superfix and the subfix. So this ga became this ka kind of halfway sound became a ga, and then it became a da because of the retroflex rata underneath, and then a dru because of the shabkyu, and it closes off with a p sound or b sound because of the ba afterwards in the suffix. So that's the most complicated syllable number of pieces to a syllable that you will have in Tibetan. So once this starts to become a familiar animal, then you don't need to worry too much. You know that the sound is drup, and that's it. It's easy. And you will see, just like in any language, there are many, many words that come back over and over and over again. They're very familiar, and they just become somewhat automatic when you need them. They're there for you when you need them. I hope you found this helpful, and you can review it if you need to. Thank you.